Hey, Dad.
Hey, Logan.
What kind of organization is atheism?
A non-profit.
Yeah.
You're still grounded.
But it was good. Right?
You're listening to The Wayward Willis with Jon and Logan, where two atheists discuss religion, culture, and maybe some politics. If you're offended by blasphemy, profanity, or you hate fun, this podcast may not be right for you. And now, on to the show.
Hey, you.
It's us.
A barrel of monkeys.
I'm your host, Jon.
And I'm Logan, captain of the pizza team.
There's a pizza team?
Yeah. And I'm the
Well, there should be. So this week, we're going to make logically fallacious arguments, appeal to authority, and block everyone on Twitter.
Alternatively, we could just be really, really sorry.
I live life with no regrets.
Well, I do. All the time. I regret every choice.
Well, you're going to regret this episode. We're talking about apologetics.
So, what even is apologetics?
Well, the dictionary defines apologetics as the religious discipline of defending or proving the truth of religious doctrines through systematic argumentation and discourse.
Boring. I'm gonna go hang out on another podcast.
I can understand why you'd feel that way, but if you hang around for a bit, you'll get to hear about the atheist's worst nightmare.
Ooh, I'm listening.
Okay. When we're talking about apologetics, it's easy to think that the root word is apology, but it's not. It actually comes from an ancient Greek word, apologia, which basically just means defense. This type of apologia was delivered by the defendant in Greek trials.
Aren't Greek trials like when Odysseus had to be tied to his boat so he wouldn't fuck mermaids?
No. I'm talking about the actual legal system.
A mermaid legal system?
Stop!
Like mermaid lawyers?
Grounded!
Rude.
All world religions, including Native American religions, have either formal or informal apologetics that have morphed and grown over time.
Looking at you, Rain Dance.
Like we've discussed before, as our knowledge of the universe has broadened, religions have either had to shoehorn their beliefs in or find end runs around the science in order to keep believing what they do.
Because, science stops existing when you choose to just ignore it.
If you ignore something, it goes away. That makes sense.
Yeah, nailed it.
Nailed it. Sometimes this is just a casual argument against the science, and other times it's a structured argument that seems valid on its surface, but falls to pieces under scrutiny. To my knowledge, no religious apologetics so far have survived examination, and even with that being the case, are still repeated by people like William Lane Craig, Reza Aslan, and Ray Comfort. I think this is a perfect place for a little sidetrack on Ray Comfort. Remember when I said I'd tell you about the atheist's worst nightmare?
Mm-hmm.
Well, get ready to be terrified because it's...
Yes.
It's the...
Spit it out, man!
It's the banana!
Oh, what fuck you.
No, seriously. Ray Comfort and Kirk Cameron teamed up together after a very strenuous Christian side hug session, pooled all of their brain cells, and decided to completely dismantle the entire atheistic worldview by claiming that only God could have made a banana so perfect that its curve hits the right spots, it grows its own condom, and it's comfortably tapered for easy insertion.
What the actual fuck?
Just kidding, fam.
Well, no, you're literally the worst.
No, but what he did say is referred to as the banana argument. And he was claiming that the way a banana fits in your palm, comes wrapped in its own container, is naturally color-coded to show ripeness, and, I'm not kidding, is curved toward your mouth so you can eat it without it squirting in your face, is all proof that God created it.
Well, I'm convinced. BRB guys gotta go convert to Christianity.
Damn, checkmate.
Deo. Deo.
It's not banana boat. So, this argument earned Ray Comfort the title Banana Man, again, not banana boat, and got him ridiculed on the internet for, well, forever, because people are still laughing at him.
Sign me up for the Laughing at Ray Comfort Club.
Membership purchased.
All you have to do is wear a banana hammock.
Actually, all you have to do is laugh at Ray Comfort. Are you wearing a banana hammock?
Indeed.
Gross. Just don't answer it.
Indeed I am. Wearing two, in fact.
Okay. So one of the reasons this argument was so funny is that Ray wasn't even addressing atheists at all. He was addressing the theory of evolution, which, as we discussed with R and Ra, has nothing to do with whether or not there's a god.
But I am intrigued to know what a god could have possibly evolved from. Probably the ancient unicorns of yore.
Wouldn't God have made unicorns?
No, the unicorns came first, and then God evolved from them. Because unicorns are divine.
Okay. So the other reason it's still so funny is that Ray and Kirk didn't even do the slightest bit of research as to what a modern day banana is and how we get them.
Everyone knows that bananas come from the banana storks. Duh.
Confirmed. So, for about 8,000 years, humans have been selectively breeding and splicing wild bananas to get them to the point they're at now, which is a seedless fruit that can't grow in the wild and has almost nothing at all in common with its ancient ancestor. That banana is a hard, nut-looking fruit full of inedible seeds. That banana is more like a nightmare than the ones we eat today.
Yeah, I'm already drafting up the first draft of that horror movie script.
Night of the Bananas.
The Banana of Doom.
The Banana Massacre.
Banana...
Okay, Nope, done.
Okay, I tried. Not very hard, but I did try.
Yeah, you tried too hard. So, basically, this is a humorous introduction to religious apologetics. However, not all apologetics are so easily laughed off because their creators have put more time into concepting and honing them.
As any master craftsman should.
That doesn't make them valid, but I'll tell you what I mean. The Kalam cosmological argument is a logically structured argument for a prime mover, which is just a vague idea of something that must have gotten everything started somehow.
I wish I had a prime mover to help me get started on this homework.
Yeah, I got nothing. William Lane Craig adopted this argument and refined it to meet his needs for proving, in air quotes, the Christian God.
Like a mathematical proof? Those are my favorite.
No, it's more like a you are a nerd proof.
Oh, roasted, I guess.
Burn? You need some aloe?
No. That was like accidentally eating a piece of pizza when it was still slightly too hot. That wasn't even remotely like a good burn. You're just terrible. Go away.
Fine. So the Kalam cosmological argument goes like this. 1. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. 2. The universe began to exist. 3. Therefore, the universe has a cause. This structure is called a syllogism.
Did you just say jism? Ew.
Ew, no, dummy. A syllogism is a logical argument with 2 or more premises that are assumed to be true. If one of the premises is false, then anything following that one cannot logically be true. So, what do you say about the Kalam syllogism so far?
I would direct everyone's attention to the blue turtle shell in Mario Kart. There was no cause for that piece of shit's existence.
That is an uncaused cause. That fucking... You know what? Stupid Mario Kart creators. Apparently, that one showed up in, like, Mario Kart 64. Am I right?
I think so.
Because... So the story that I'm told is that it showed up because the Nintendo 64's processor couldn't handle it if you, like, start lapping people. So they threw the blue turtle shell in there so that they could, like, fuck you up and slow you down to let everybody else catch up.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's true.
Well, I'm gonna assume that that's untrue and that there still is no cause.
Okay, you know what? Blue turtle shell? Absolutely no fucking reason to exist whatsoever. Fuck you, blue turtle shell.
Fuck you, Nintendo. Get your shit together.
Stupid cheater shell.
Cheating ass turtle bitch. Oh.
Okay, so back on topic. Here's what I would propose about Craig's apologetic. It's that we can't really even verify the first premise. It's just an assertion. We only think something can't exist without cause because we don't know of anything commonly popping into existence without cause. I mean, in quantum physics, you have virtual particles that appear to do exactly that, but I'm only an allegorical scientist, so I couldn't say for sure.
Oh, don't even pretend like you know anything about quantum theory, you fake scientist.
Allegorical scientist, thank you very much. So even if you grant premise 1 is correct, there's still a problem with premise 2. We don't know that the universe began to exist the way he's asserting it did.
But I mean, I'm sure he knows that for sure.
Possibly.
No, he got this. It's on lock. Nailed it.
Well, I mean, if you just say something is true, then it's got to be true, right?
Yeah, like, it's true that you're a piece of shit. Boom. True. Roasted.
Rude?
Well, I mean, yeah, but true.
So if he's positing that some ultimate being could exist eternally, then why couldn't the universe exist eternally? Maybe the universe has always been the universe and has just undergone infinite expansions and contractions forever.
Push, universe, push! You're doing great, honey, just breathe! Wrong.
You did this to me!
Wrong kind of contraction.
That's the wrong kind of contractions. But it's fine to pose these questions as hypotheses and thought experiments when you're high.
Whoa, dudes. What if, like, the universe was like a baby that was born from, like, 2 other universes and shit, man? Fucking crazy.
Back to the show. But it's completely different when you're saying it like it's a fact. So because of how logic works, if premise 1 or 2 cannot be proven true, then premise 3 doesn't even matter.
Aw, poor premise. You matter to me, buddy.
Premises need a little love too.
Yeah, they do. Poor guy. You hurt his feelings.
Well, I don't care.
He's just gonna go on back to the New Testament now.
Okay, I'll give you that one. But, of course, there's more. Of course there's more. Why wouldn't there be more? So Craig expanded this syllogism to another 3 premises and a conclusion that go like this. 1, the universe has a cause, because he thinks he's established that. Number 2, if the universe has a cause, then an uncaused personal creator of the universe must exist who, sans the universe, is beginningless, changeless, immaterial, timeless, spaceless, and enormously powerful.
Yep, logic so far. Got it. Yep.
Boring logic. 3, therefore, an uncaused personal creator of the universe exists who blah, 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 all that bullshit I just read. 4, conclusion, that creator is God.
Yep. Nailed it. No, but for real, I think that stopped being logic and started being toddler speak.
I think you're giving it too much credit.
Well, maybe. Maybe
I
it
think
was
toddlers make more sense than this.
the death god.
Well, it's like William Lane Craig ordered his jump to conclusions, Matt, and just started playing without anybody else. He was like, house party, and no one showed up, and he was like, whatever, I'm doing it anyway. So what Craig is getting to here is that the universe was created by God, obviously. But not just any God, it's specifically his Christian God. How does he get there? Who fucking knows? It's a miracle.
Hey, what did we say about that? You're fired. I'm replacing you with a ferret.
BT dubs, ferrets, not intelligently designed.
You don't know that.
I just asserted it. It's true. Boom!
Oh, damn. I forgot that we established that that's a thing.
So this is the problem with apologetics that take on the disguise of a logical argument, and that's that most people are dazzled by the sparklies of its reasonableness instead of put off by its massive leaps to conclusions it can't support.
Not even like bronze level support either. Unlike me, gold level support for days. I'll get all of the 80 carries fed, just you wait and see.
But what if we're talking about AT&T customer support?
In that case, I just want to kill myself because that's the worst.
Exactly. So in this instance, Craig claims that the creator of the universe must be God because there must be a creator, but it's flawed logic all around. If there must be a creator, then it could just as easily be an invisible pink flying unicorn.
Like I said, the ancient unicorns that God evolved from.
Oh, yeah. So flying unicorns can be called alicorn or pegacorn, by the way. Or Maggie, you don't know their lives.
Unicorns are so good. We should bring Felicia on for an interview sometime. I'm sure she would give us lots of fluff.
You're still grounded. Do you want to have all your unicorn collection taken away?
No. Also, it just occurred to me that that joke probably makes no sense to anybody. I have a stuffed unicorn named Felicia. Now you have the backstory. Go back and listen to that joke again.
And now you should be ashamed of yourself. Also, if you suggest that something is timeless, spaceless, and immaterial, you're literally saying it doesn't exist.
It almost sounds like the setup for a really bad Your Mom joke. What's timeless, spaceless, and immaterial? Your mom! I guess it works, actually.
Actually doesn't. This apologetic is arguing for the existence of something that cannot reasonably exist. So, are you convinced yet?
Totes malotes, dog.
The logical fallacies and apologetics number in the countless billions. This one's for you, Daddy Trumpo.
Insert hour-long rant about grammar here, and something else about phalluses.
Okay, well, first of all, grammar is very important, and pretty much anything can be a phallus if you squint.
Like the word fallacies.
Phalluses. Phalluses.
We're talking about penises now, guys.
It's a penis joke.
That's the podcast. It's just penises now.
Penis. Okay, so anyway, I think we should talk about the types of common fallacies, not phalluses, that you should avoid when discussing religion and belief. The most common fallacy has got to be the argument from ignorance. People commit this sin when they prove their point by saying nobody knows whether it's false. In a religious context, it would go something like this. I believe Yahweh exists. You can't prove Yahweh doesn't exist. Therefore, Yahweh exists.
I mean, yeah. When you play hide and seek, it's not like you cease to exist because you're hiding and the other people can't see you. What are you, dumb?
It's
Idiot.
an object permanence issue. It's kind of like when you have a dog and you put the ball behind your back and it's just like starts looking around, like turns around in circles.
That's what it is. Religious people are just silly dogs.
Silly
Only
dogs.
not as cute.
Well, I mean, some of them are cute.
Well, that's something that may be true.
Okay, let's move on. This argument is self-defeating because A, you don't prove a negative, you have to prove a positive, and B, ignorance has been the single greatest driver of scientific discovery of all time. We don't know how or why something works, we investigate, and we find out it's not magic.
Whoa, wait, are you trying to say that magic doesn't exist now?
Yep, boom, done!
Wow.
So next we have the appeal to authority. This is where an apologist takes a perceived expert or source and, without validating the reasons for the source's authority, asserts that whatever it says is true. It would go like this. I know Yahweh exists because I've read the Bible and it says Yahweh exists. Therefore, Yahweh.
Or like this. I enjoy Lucky Charms and Lucky says that they're magically delicious. Therefore, magic.
That is irrefutable logic.
Nailed it. Nailed it.
At the very least, you could say, therefore, delicious. Because, let's face it, Lucky Charms really are good.
BRB, can I go make some Lucky Charms?
So the follow-up question is, how do you know the Bible is true?
How do you know she's a witch?
Well,
Well, she's dressed like one.
because she's got what?
She turned me into a newt. I got better.
All right, so the answer is usually because it says it is, which makes me want to strangle a ferret.
Well, that's uncalled for.
Also, because it's taking my job.
Yeah, and maybe he won't talk about strangling his superiors. Get your shit together, man.
Fucking ferrets. I'm gonna build a ferret wall.
A ferret wall. Are you gonna make the ferrets pay for it?
The ferrets are gonna pay for this shit.
Oh, man.
So anyway, when you're discussing a topic, you should try to avoid using logical fallacies. Our guest this week has probably heard more logical fallacies and flawed arguments than anyone I know. We're happy this week to be interviewing an influential voice of reason and a really nice guy. He's a member of the atheist community of Austin, founder of Iron Chariots, a host of the Atheist Experience, and one of the Unholy Trinity. We're talking to Matt Dillahunty. It's great to have you, Matt.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
I know that you've heard this before, but I think it's important to keep encouraging people who are doing good work. And I just wanted to say, when I was struggling with my deconversion from Christianity, you were a very big part of what made me more comfortable thinking through what I believed and why. And so I just wanted to thank you among, other people, but I just wanted to thank you for helping me through that.
Oh, well, you're welcome, I guess. Well, one thing I keep pointing out to people is, you did all the work. I mean, I talked. You could have just as easily listened to somebody else or read a book, and there's 1,000 other people who heard me say the same thing, and it didn't affect them in the same way. So, you guys, everybody needs to take credit for being willing to challenge their own ideas. And to whatever extent I've helped people, that's cool. It's a good enough reason for me to keep doing the show.
Yeah, and I think that it's a good reason for you to keep doing it. But I think that we should just point out to our listeners that what I just heard is I'm a freaking hero.
Yeah, that's the gist of it. He wears a cape and everything, guys.
I can leap tall buildings in a single bound.
I can jump to conclusions.
My superpower is being belligerent.
Well, Matt, this week we are talking about apologetics, and I had some questions that I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
When did you first start encountering mainstream apologetics, like Dinesh D'Souza and Craig and Slick and all of those people? Like, it seems like it's gotten bigger.
I know some of it I would have been introduced to as a teenager, more along the lines of Josh McDowell and others. But at that time, it wasn't really that significant to me. It wasn't something I spent a lot of time on until much later when I was around, 30 and decided that God wanted me to be a minister. So I spent a great deal of time studying a lot of that stuff. So it's probably, I'm 48 now, so maybe 18 years ago is when I really started to dig in on the modern apologetics, which turns out to be nothing more than, the not so modern apologetics kind of dusted off and repackaged.
So these apologetics, like modern day apologetics, it seems like lots more people, just normal everyday religious people, are using these. And it seems odd to me because when I was a Christian, I never would have, I don't know if it's had access to these arguments or that I just would have even tried using them because they seem strange. But it seems like maybe YouTube and the internet are kind of propagating these new reformulated arguments. Do you think that's right?
I think that's part of it. One of the things is people don't often have a good understanding of what they believe and why. And for example, when I was a believer, I didn't have much use for apologetics. They were there mainly, you read evidence that demands a verdict. And I've said before that it seems that its prime purpose is to reassure the people who are already convinced. Because if you actually start to dig through what McDowell says in there, it's not necessarily true or compelling or convincing. But if you already believe it, it's like if you've bought into the idea that, of course, hey, this really makes you feel good. Look at all this evidence and this guy has done all this, but it's not a fair assessment. And so when we see people, or when I would go out, for the Monday night visitation to witness, we were witnessing to non-believers who are technically atheists, but nobody identified that way. And it was more about, hey, come to our church and do you have a good relationship with God? There was nothing about trying to demonstrate that a God exists or that we had the right God this way. It was more about, read the Bible and get the feels. And I think that it's not so much that religious people on their own set out to learn more apologetics. I know that happens. I've spoken at apologetics conferences. I think what's happened is the atheist movement, the secular community, has grown and put massive amounts of content out on the internet. And now people are dealing with it on the internet and with their kids or with whoever is visiting their church. They're seeing more debates, and that forces them to try to learn some apologetics. Unfortunately, they don't. I think a lot of what you hear is people regurgitating what they heard some other apologist say. And I always try to knock them off of their script to get them to actually think and respond on their own rather than, parroting what, William Lane Craig said or whatever.
Right. So do you think that it's kind of a misunderstanding on the part of the person who's regurgitating them? Do you think that maybe they misunderstand that this isn't a way to debate your religious beliefs with a non-believer, but it's a way to kind of bolster other believers, to kind of make them feel a little more comfortable with how true their beliefs are?
I don't know that they're actually aware of that. I do know that ends up, being kind of how it's used a little bit. It's weird that what I see with a lot of the apologetics is that they run in cycles. Like, in the 13 and a half years I've been on the TV show, you'll get Pascal's wager for a couple months, and then you'll get a cosmological argument for a couple months, and then you'll get teleological arguments for a couple months, and then you'll get moral arguments. It's like, you're swatting these away and they go back and dust off and try to repair this, and it just cycles again. There's nothing new.
It almost feels like it's in the same kind of rotation that Facebook memes are in. Like it seems like memes rotate out for a little while and then they come back and start to become super popular. And I feel like that's kind of the same way when it comes to apologetics, and maybe even potentially in the same fashion, like people in religious circles on Facebook, sharing them with each other, use this when you talk to an atheist to debate your point and sound like you know what you're talking about.
Well, that's the thing. When my folks found out I was an atheist, they actually went and listened to Lee Strobel and asked him after his talk what they should do to reach out to their atheist son. And what did Lee tell them? He sold them his books. Books that I'd already read, books that I'd already written rebuttals to. I got to meet Lee last year, and I told him this story, and I said, in the future, tell them to talk to their kids. Stop selling your books, because if their kids are anything at all like me, your books not only didn't help any understanding, it didn't help the relationship. Once you care about people a little bit more. But there are the people who listen to Lee and say, oh, he's a skeptic. No, he's not. Well, he went out and asked the hard questions of people when he wrote his book, Case for Christ, Case for Creator. No, he didn't. He didn't go out and interview anybody who disagreed with him in any significant way, and all he did was toss out softball questions. It is very much a preaching to the choir. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure somebody's become convinced because of Lee Strobel, but I don't know any atheist and skeptic who has evaluated those things previously and rejected them that finds anything compelling in what Strobel or Josh McDowell or any of them have to say.
Right. Like I said, my deconversion from Christianity was, it actually took me more than a decade of just struggling with what I believed and seeking out information and trying to figure out if what I believed was justified. And I think what really struck me about Lee Strobel when I encountered him, not personally, but his stuff, was that it seemed like he asked questions of somebody who probably didn't have good reasons to believe any more than he or I did. But then once they answered it, he just accepted that and was like, yep, okay, that's true. On to the next question.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I think that when we're talking about apologetics, we're talking about people trying to convince you that what they believe is reasonable and then coming up with what they would consider logical proofs to kind of bear those out.
Yeah, they're not giving the reason they believe, because, the reason they believe shouldn't convince anybody else. I mean, like William Lane Craig believes based on the inner witness of the Holy Spirit. Well, nobody other than Craig should be convinced by his inner witness. To everybody else, it's hearsay. But he knows he can't present that, so he has to present arguments that are consistent with his beliefs, which he thinks should be compelling. And this is why people can point out, the fallacies and problems in his argument over and over and over again, and yet he just keeps doing it because he believes first. And I can't convince you the way I was convinced, so I'm going to try the best way I can to convince you.
I think that if he was being honest, then he would certainly just accept that his faith is completely personal and that whatever convinced him of it was only good enough to convince him of it. And if God or gods or whatever wanted to convince other people, then surely they would know what it would take to convince those people and do that.
Yep.
I mean, if God could have done it for him, then certainly he could do it for other people, like me.
Yeah. If a Damascus Road experience is good enough for Saul, why are the rest of us getting ignored?
Right. Well, and that's one of the things, I don't even know if we're on topic of apologetics anymore, but just with religion in general, when we're talking about the things that do convince people and the proof that God is willing to give, if you're positing that the God of the universe who wants a personal relationship with everybody just stays hidden because you have to find him on your own or whatever excuse it is, but then you clearly have documented in your book that you claim to be true, this God personally interacting and appearing in front of and touching and talking to other people. Like, what makes those people so special that they got personal interaction, but we don't?
Well, it's because they won a game of hide and seek. That's all it is.
Well, they think they did.
It is written that they did. So you were mentioning like the teleological argument, and what I wonder is you encounter these so much. It's kind of ridiculous. But what's the one apologetic argument that just is like nails on a chalkboard above all the others to you?
Oh, I mean, it's really kind of hard to say. A lot of it depends more on who I'm having a conversation with than the specifics of an argument. Because I've talked about, for example, the transcendental argument for the existence of God. I've talked about with a lot of people. Sometimes it's frustrating, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes Pascal's wager is frustrating, and sometimes it isn't. But I think the ones that bug me are the ones where there's a clear... Craig is very popular for using the Kalam cosmological argument, but that's not an argument for a God. It's not even an argument for a deistic God. The word God doesn't appear in there anywhere. So this argument that is the cornerstone of one of the greatest apologists has nothing to do with a God until you slap a bunch of stuff on there. You go from the conclusion, and then you just assert what that cause is. Right. And even though that cause at best could just be some kind of vague deistic notion, they're using it to prop up the specifics of their Christianity or whichever religion they're going to use, because it doesn't just apply to Christianity. It's one of those things where the whole thing could boil down to, hey, there's got to be some reason there's something other than nothing. Yes, you're right. There has to be some reason that there's something other than nothing. I would think that maybe that reason is that it's impossible that there could have been nothing, but you think it's, a God? Cool. How did you get from A to B? Well, just seemed like, the right answer.
Right. And when you think about it, it's just a completely random answer, especially when you consider that this person only believes in the God that they do because of an accident of where they were born.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest factors for sure.
And they're also discounting universe farting pixies, right?
They are. I don't know how they didn't consider that.
So I guess when I'm thinking about the apologetics that are out there and how unconvincing they are, I'm thinking about how it does seem like there are more and more people in America, I think all over the world, who are declaring themselves as non-religious, or just at the very least saying that religion isn't as important to them. So do you think that this kind of decline in religiosity means that religious arguments and the doctrine just isn't sticking anymore, that it just isn't convincing people?
Well, I'm not sure. I think that the arguments probably still work. It's just that there really wasn't all that much argumentation involved in getting most people involved in the church. I walked down the aisle at the age 5. You bring your family members into it, you recruit your friends, it becomes the community place, and, then there's just sermons. So I don't know that the arguments are any more or less effective. It's just that we're doing a good job of getting information to people. The world's changing, and where no one in my family had met or heard about an atheist, even though we would talk about the non-believers we were going to go witness to, it's becoming increasingly unavoidable. Marriage equality and gay rights happened in part because people came out, and suddenly you knew way more gay people than you ever thought, and you liked them, and it became hard to deny them rights. In the similar way, it's hard to pretend that atheists are monstrous, immoral people trying to destroy God's nation when they're your friends and neighbors and your doctor and the guy that picks up your trash. And so just having more out and more discussions about this, probably more responsible for change than as if I could never say that humans have outgrown the apologetics argument when I live in a world where the least qualified, least presidential, least knowledgeable person was elected to be president, and people are running around screaming fake news and believing anything they can and claiming conspiracy theories left and right. It's very clear that we haven't become so much more enlightened that we're not likely to fall prey to arguments. I think that's more of a social aspect where now more people who are atheists, and you aren't getting all your information about atheists from your preacher. You're actually running people at schools and at universities, and when you're out and about, and the people are on news stations, and there are celebrities who are out as atheists, and that fundamentally changes things.
Yeah, and conferences and things like that make it a little more accessible as well when you can actually find out about them.
Yeah, I mean, I know for some conference attendance is, on the decline a little bit, but that may just be that we had way too many in a brief amount of time. And when I go to conferences, one of the things that people will ask, is, hey, is this your first conference? And the number of hands that go up always makes me a little worried, because for most conferences, it's a good, significant chunk, perhaps even a majority of attendees. This is their first ever conference. Does that mean that people come once and don't ever come again? Or does it mean that we're constantly reaching out to, a bigger audience? It's hard to tell. And there's so many questions that we ask about religiosity, about, hey, is the world actually becoming more secular? Because we know, with millennials and younger, the statistics show that they're more likely, or they're less likely to be religious than their parents or their grandparents.
Right.
However, are they just as likely to fall into religion when they have kids, when they start getting closer to death, those sorts of things? There's concern that, young people just tend to rebel and be atheists. But I know from the statistics I've seen that it's growing across the board. So I'm happy with the progress we're making, almost no matter what the cause is.
I mean, I can speak from experience. I think that I've briefly touched on this before in a couple of our episodes in the past, but I'm obviously from the younger generation, and I've seen the people around me that used to be extremely religious and would go to church all the time with their parents. And then as soon as they kind of got out on their own and started being independent, it sort of just fell by the wayside, because it's hard enough, according to the people of my age group, it's hard enough for us just to get out and start being adults on our own. And some of that stuff just stops being important because there are so many other things to worry about. And I feel like that's generally the direction that a lot of people that I've met are leaning, specifically people who used to be religious and now aren't so much. Even if it's not a complete transition to secular, where if they're just well, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual or whatever, something along those lines. But I've noticed that it's kind of rare for me to see people in my age group actively going to church all the time and stuff like that.
That happened to me too. I mean, when I was 18, I went in the Navy, and I still believed, but my religion became far less important than, living life, doing my job, having fun, etc. And toward the end of the time in the Navy, I had kind of it wasn't that I stopped believing, it was that I was frustrated by the watered down one size fits all sort of religion that you will find in the military. So my dog tags actually had NRP for no religious preference on it, because I hadn't been active in any church. I wasn't part of a denomination. That said, it was still another 6 or 7 years before I ever got to the point where I got serious enough about it to, I don't believe that. I'm an atheist. I look back on it, and there were things that happened when I was in the Navy that were incredibly formative that I didn't recognize at the time.
Yes.
You're responsible for 30 people, and they have a variety of different beliefs. It changes how you're going to deal with that. You're no longer everybody in my family's a Southern Baptist. We all go to the same damn church. We all do the same things. I got this constant reinforcement. There's no conflict. Or if there is conflict, it's, between the First Baptist Church and the Second Baptist Church about something relatively insignificant. And then all of a sudden you're, when I ran First Division, it was me and another, we were co-LPOs. You got 30, 35 guys, and there were, I was in Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and we had at least one person in our division who was gay who got kicked out for it. And it wasn't his fault, and he was a good guy. That fundamentally changed how I looked at things, and having to settle disagreements with people, including some disagreements where, that somebody would cite their religion about something, gave me a much better understanding about church-state separation. And
right. Yeah, and I think that that's the misunderstanding on the part of religious people, is when you do start talking about church-state separation, they don't hear, we're trying to keep government out of your religion as much as we're trying to keep your religion out of your government, and it protects both sides equally. What they hear is, oh, you're trying to just shut me out of everything.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely not the case. Yeah, and so one of the things when I was in the Army that just really got me to kind of scratching my head and questioning sort of how things worked, or just one of those factors that kind of piled on to what I was dealing with, was we went out for gunnery exercises. I was on M1 tanks. And when we got out to the field, we lined up our tanks and we put tarps down, and we lined up all of our training ammo on these tarps before loading them into the tanks. And the exercise was, we all stood in formation right at the ends of these tarps by our ammo, and an Army chaplain would come in there with holy water and sprinkle the tanks, the ammo, and us with holy water and bless us to give us a successful gunnery and to make us ready for whatever came our way.
Dude, that angers me because pretty much the exact same thing happened. I guess we're all talking about our military experience on this interview. When I was in the Air Force, basically, I was doing like nothing related to combat or anything even remotely dangerous or anything along those lines. I was in metrology, which is just sitting in a laboratory calibrating equipment all day long. And we still had like commander's calls where a chaplain would come in and basically say things like, God, please help these young airmen find the intellect to put these pieces of equipment back to the customers with the highest specified accuracies. It's like, what the fuck kind of bullshit prayer is this? Like, God doesn't give a fuck about metrology.
I've got Guy P. Harrison. We had a couple conversations. He wrote a book, one of my favorite books to recommend, called 50 Reasons People Give for Believing in a God. And I pretty much agree with everything he wrote in the book, except for one example where he was in a bicycle accident. And when he regained consciousness, there were people standing around praying. And he was like, see, that doesn't bother me. That actually was, really nice. And I was like, would you say the same thing if they were sacrificing a chicken and sprinkling the blood around your head?
Yeah, exactly.
And wouldn't it be much better if they actually had called 911? And so when you talk about somebody sprinkling holy water on tanks, that frustrates the crap out of me. But I will say it's probably less harmful than the new age woo peddlers. It's not that all irrational thoughts are equally harmful. It's just that the reasons that you accept things which don't have good evidence for it are probably tied together. If prayer worked, you don't think there'd be a chaplain sitting on every tank?
Yeah, and not only that, but, if prayer worked and Jesus is the great physician, then why are there Catholic and Christian hospitals? Why do those exist?
Yeah. Why won't God heal amputees?
Right. Do you still get nervous when you perform either magic or on a debate stage?
No, not really. The only time where I really have to deal with nerves at all is if I'm doing a magic show and I'm debuting a new effect, because there'll always be that, have you practiced it enough? Have you got this worked out? What are you going to do if something goes wrong? And, something's always going to go wrong. I don't know if I've had, the last show I had nothing actually went wrong, but most shows something goes wrong. It's just that most people don't notice it because half the time nobody knows what it is that you're going to do.
And that's showbiz.
When it comes to speaking and debating, I was very terrified of public speaking when we first started. And even early on, when I would, give a press release on the steps of the Capitol for the ACA, I was a little nervous. And the first times I gave a lecture for the ACA monthly lecture, I was probably nervous then, but I just got over it. It turns out if you're not trying to bullshit anybody, if you just say, I don't know when you don't know, if you're being honest and you are sincere about both educating people and potentially having your own mind changed, public speaking is a piece of cake, because what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I mean, somebody's going to leave disagreeing with me or not liking me. There were people that walked in that way.
Right. So when you go into a debate, in your mind, are you thinking of it more like a conversation where maybe you'll learn something and maybe you won't?
Yeah, I always learn something. And I've tried to change the nature of the debates that I do, which is part of the reason I started the Atheist Debates Project. It's not just for the godless heathens. I'm hoping that, some of the people I've debated or some people who might want to debate will come over and learn something from that so that maybe they'll show up with something different.
Okay, so that's actually a good segue because that was my next question about your Atheist Debate series. I find that the more I watch that, the more detailed it is, but very accessible. And you do a good job of going through the information that you're presenting. So you just said that, your goal is to kind of have the audience be everyone, really, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not teaching people how to go out and have big public formal debates at universities or conventions. Certainly you could do that. Because that's where the information is coming from. That's where some of my experiences. But this is about helping people. Your aunt shows up at a family reunion, and as happened to me not too long ago, and says, "So tell me, do you really believe in atheism?" That I'm actually going to do a video about this probably midweek next week. I love the conversations because they give me a better look at the content. So I'm not just hey, this is what Matt happened to think about. This is about a real interaction with somebody. Somebody emailed and was really confused about this topic. Or I sat down with a relative who said something so bizarre as, do you really believe in atheism? And then thinking about how I had that conversation and how I would prefer to have that conversation. Those types of things are valuable. Posting the debates that I do and then deconstructing those debates to show, here's what I did wrong. Here's what they did wrong, and people will find other things that we each did wrong. That's the way we learn.
Right. And on an ongoing basis. But I do think that it's really, I don't know, like I feel like I have a lot of respect for that kind of approach that you would take, where instead of going to a debate and just like thinking that you drop the mic on somebody and walk away, you can actually do the replay and be like, oh, well, I could have done this better, or he really had a point there. And then like figure out, maybe you need to do a little more studying about this or that.
Yeah. And that's the way I've done the TV show for 13 and a half years. When I leave the show and I'm driving to dinner or I'm driving home, I'm replaying the show in my head going, oh, you could have said this. Oh, you should have said that. Ooh, maybe you'll have to go back and listen, because I think you might have actually got this wrong because you decided to, speak so fast. And I play little games on the show of seeing how quickly I can predict exactly where they're going, which sometimes is awesome. And sometimes it's counterproductive because I want to get to the end when there are people out there who have, not been doing this as long, who aren't going to see, where exactly this is going. And now there's content that would educate them that they're not getting. So sometimes you got to slow down, take a step back and, do what you can. I love doing the show. I love doing the atheist debate stuff. The digging in on these sorts of things, it's something that I can't help but do. It wasn't like an idea that I had of, oh, I'm going to do it this way. It was like even my most mic drop moment ever, which would have been the rebuttal that I wrote ahead of time for Sci-10 Bruggencake.
That was amazing.
There's actually a flaw with doing that. I pointed it out in the debate review. It was a stunt, and it was pretty effective when you're going up against somebody saying, how do you know, how do you know, how do you know? And you pre-write your rebuttal. But to be fair, not everything that he brought up was in the rebuttal. And there were things in the rebuttal that, it was just educated guesses on where he was going to go. And it's not that hard to do when someone is consistent, which, I guess you get points for consistency, even if you're consistently wrong or consistently irrational. But I'm happy I did it. And it's been probably most people's favorite moment from a debate. That said, it's not something that I'd ever do again, even if I found someone to be predictable. It was specifically tailored to that jackass because he doesn't even understand the arguments that he's making. He's taking the presuppositionalist stuff from Greg Bahnsen and Van Til and others, and he's turned them into sound bites. He's the Ray Comfort of tag and presuppositionalism. And I mean, one of the questions we talked about potentially is, who's the most frustrating religious apologist out there? They're all frustrating. Cy, Eric Hovind, his daddy, Kent Hovind, Ray Comfort, Ken Ham. It amazes me that they can get an audience with the same tired shtick that's been demolished over and over and over again.
Yeah, well, I think that backing up just a little bit to your debate stunt, I think that it was definitely more than a stunt. I think that the reason that it worked so well for me was because I had seen these apologists just, regurgitate and recycle and reuse all of these arguments that are just constantly being demolished. And it gets to the point where you start thinking, you're like scratching your head going like, are they actually having this conversation, or do they just write this stuff down ahead of time and not really address in real time what's going on? And then when you were able to pull out a pre-written rebuttal to something that you knew he was going to do, and he absolutely did it, even if it was not, 100% on the nose and addressed 100% of what he had said, it really showed the flaw in these canned, preformed, recycled apologetics.
He doesn't care about the conversation. He thinks there's no possibility that he could be wrong. And so conversation with him is useless, or pretty much. But there's lots of other people out there to have debates with. And so I don't have to debate him again.
Right. Yeah, and you definitely shouldn't.
No. He gets no more of my time.
Good. Okay, so what are you going to be doing for the next couple of months? Where can people find you in person?
Well, they can always go to patreon.com/atheistdebates to see the video. I put the content up there. It's free for everybody. It'll link directly to my YouTube channel. You can go to mattdillahunty.com to find information of upcoming events. I'm working with Pangburn Philosophy on quite a few of them, or actually almost all of them. We're doing a series of events called the Celebration of Science and Reason. And then I'll be on the Atheist Experience on, every third week or so when I'm in town, and probably doing more lectures and debates and magic shows in between.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm definitely going to link those. I'll link your Patreon account in the show notes. I really appreciate you talking to us. It has been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed meeting you, and I've enjoyed talking to you. So thanks for giving us your time.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go crawl back into my bed and die for a day or so, but I shall rise again.
We see what you did there.
Yeah.
Good job.
You don't have to go to a church or a theological debate to encounter apologetics. There are plenty of horrible arguments in the political space. Take, for example, and I know this is a controversial topic, but I don't give a fuck, the Second Amendment. The idiotic fervor and stupid argumentation around this part of our Constitution yields so many bad arguments it's hard to even know where to start. Perhaps we can start with the NRA's wishy-washy, non-committal statement following the Las Vegas shooting. I'll read a portion of it and tackle the obvious apologetic arguments. Quote, "In the aftermath of the evil and senseless attack in Las Vegas, the American people are looking for answers as to how future tragedies can be prevented. Unfortunately, the first response from some politicians has been to call for more gun control. Banning guns from law-abiding Americans based on the criminal act of a madman will do nothing to prevent future attacks." End quote. Now, I'm not stupid enough to think that we could just snap our fingers and have all guns, legal and illegal, disappear from the country. We've dug ourselves into a hole so deep, there's no way we could ever just ban all guns. We'd have a second civil war, for sure. But when your argument is that you cannot prevent madmen from killing people by severely limiting, monitoring, and regulating their ability to obtain guns, you're just using misdirection and untruth as the foundation for your stance. I feel like I'm going to be pointing out over and over that there are countries on this planet with incredibly strict gun laws and complete bans, and they have fewer gun deaths every year than the US has in one fucking week. Gun control actually works. But this is the apologetic they start with. It's called the criminals are gonna criminal argument. Moving on. Quote, "In Las Vegas, reports indicate that certain devices were used to modify the firearms involved. Despite the fact that the Obama administration approved the sale of bump fire stocks on at least 2 occasions, the National Rifle Association is calling on the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives to immediately review whether these devices comply with federal law." End quote. Hooray! It's the thanks Obama defense. Look, it's true that bump stocks and devices like them were deemed legal and people bought them during Obama's presidency. But this isn't a one-person government, and lobbyists like the NRA drive these decisions through pressure, bribery, and organization of extremely large and vocal voting blocs. You can't have spent the past 150 years yelling and screaming about how you want every citizen of the country to own an arsenal and then blame someone else when you get your way and some fucking asswipe murders and injures hundreds of people in 10 minutes. Is it Obama's fault? Sure, I'd say his administration shares some of the blame for doing business as usual with the Second Amendment clowns, but you started it back in the 1800s. Let's read more. Quote, "In an increasingly dangerous world, the NRA remains focused on our mission, strengthening America's Second Amendment freedom to defend themselves, their families, and their communities. To that end, on behalf of our 5 million members across the country, we urge Congress to pass National Right to Carry Reciprocity, which will allow law-abiding citizens to defend themselves and their families from acts of violence." End quote. And there it is, the big one. This is the "more guns make everyone safer" apologetic. Never mind that you just blamed Obama for not doing anything to limit access to guns and accessories that would facilitate a Las Vegas-like situation. I guess we're not going to address the outright hypocrisy here. So now we're stuck with the insane idea that if every single person in the country were walking around with a loaded gun on them at all times, there would be no crime and nobody would ever die of a gunshot wound. But John, you might be saying, they're only talking about law-abiding citizens, not people who would shoot people. Okay, so if only law-abiding citizens are carrying guns, what the fuck are they protecting themselves against? Rabid vampire bats? What the fuck are you even arguing here? Every law-abiding citizen should own a gun, and every criminal is going to criminal themselves a gun, and people could protect themselves from guns if they have guns, blah, blah, blah. No matter how you look at this, it's bullshit. You have no argument here. You have no solution. I own a pistol, and it stays locked up in my house, except for the rare occasion I go to the range and put holes in paper. Yeah, it's kind of fun for recreation. Whatever. But I would gladly take my pistol to the police station or government office and watch it get melted down if there were even a chance that this government would stop listening to these idiot gun apologists and take some action to protect us. It's been said that if you repeat a lie often enough, people will eventually believe it. The NRA is lying, and they've been doing it for 150 years. We have to counter it by spreading some truth, even if it is unpopular. Random verse. Random verse. Random verse. Random verse. Our random verse this week comes from the Qur'an in Surah 76:4. It goes like this.
Lo, we have prepared for disbelievers manacles and carcans and a raging fire.
That was a short one.
Yeah, that was very small.
It's small but meaty, like me.
Like your phallus?
Like my fallacies.
Oh my. All right. So let's see. Let's break it down. How does it compare to living in LA? So we have prepared for disbelievers, manacles, and carcans, and a raging fire.
Yep. So basically, it's like a bondage fantasy.
50 Shades of Surah.
Right? 50 Shades of Muhammad. So carcans, if that's how you say it, likely are referring to something like a pillory, and a pillory would be a phallus in a town square that you are shackled to with the intent of publicly shaming you for some infraction that you committed.
Yeah, so this does kind of sound like BDSM.
Yeah, it kind of does. Like you get handcuffed and you get publicly shamed, and then it makes you boiling hot. Raging fire.
And then you're off to the races.
Right? Boner time. So what this is talking about is basically hell.
Yeah.
So they're saying that the disbelievers, the people who rejected Islam, are going to be handcuffed, publicly shamed, and set on fire, I guess for all eternity.
That would be a pretty awful punishment. I'm not going to lie.
It would be a pretty awful punishment. But, I mean, I don't know. It seems
the whole time you would have to be like, oh, no, I'm shackled to a penis.
I wonder if it actually looks like a penis, too. Hey, and I also
Just
wonder...
to further embarrass you.
Well, is it a circumcised or an uncircumcised penis? I'm not sure with Islam.
I don't know. I honestly would know less about it than you. So if you don't know, then 97% that I wouldn't.
Okay, well then what that actually means is nobody knows. No one knows.
Oh, right. Well, because the knowledge doesn't exist. Well, no, because we can't prove that it doesn't exist.
Oh. Well, then what I'm going to say is because you cannot prove that it isn't a two-headed uncircumcised dick, then it's a two-headed uncircumcised dick.
A two-headed
Yeah.
Wait, are both of the heads uncircumcised?
Yeah, both of them. It's
Or
doubly...
are they just encompassed in the same foreskin?
I don't know.
You clearly did not think this far ahead.
God
and I
damn
have
it.
outwitted you in a discussion about penises.
That's what I get for talking before thinking.
I am both proud and ashamed.
You should be ashamed of yourself and your family.
I disown my family.
Oh, I think that was racist. So one of the things that I've always heard about Islam's hell is that the people who are in there are not only just like tortured in fire and stuff, but also there's something in there about like having your flesh flayed off every single day, like just being skinned alive and then overnight your skin grows back, and then the next day they just do it all over again.
Is that Islam?
I believe it is.
I for sure thought that was something, but I don't know if it's Islam or not.
Yeah. It seems just inordinately cruel. Like, I don't know what you could possibly do that is so bad that it would deserve you a punishment like that.
Well, maybe it's one of those things where it's like a payoff. Like, you get your skin flayed off, but then they, like, turn it into, you know, like potato skins, but like human skins. And they, like, roast them up and they, like, spice them up and stuff. And then it's kind of tasty. So, like, it hurts, but then you get a delicious treat afterwards, so.
Okay, is like sour cream and bacon crumbles included?
Little bacon bits and sour cream and some like chives.
Okay, I can get on board with that.
Crispy human skins.
This is my question. Like, when your skin is growing back overnight. Okay, and first of all, how do you even tell if you're in an ethereal plane of hell? How do you even tell if it's day or night? Like, are there actual 24-hour periods in eternity? That doesn't even make any sense.
Maybe it's like Happy Death Day, where your day just restarts when you die.
Okay. So it's basically like cutting Bill Murray's skin off of him every Groundhog Day, and then when he goes to sleep, he wakes up with new skin.
Yeah.
Well, see, I was just wondering, like, when your skin's growing back, does it feel good? So is there, like, balance to it? Like, it's, you know, like when you wait a really, really, really long time to pee and you have to go pee really bad, and then when you finally do, it's almost orgasmic?
I
just go with me.
Sure.
I mean, don't go with me. I can go to the bathroom by myself.
I'm a big kid now.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like, this, I feel like these descriptions of hell are a little too, like, some of them are pretty specific, but they're still kind of like not specific. Like, they're just like this vague, you're gonna hate this kind of description.
I feel like you should just go read Dante's Inferno.
Yeah, there you go.
It's got about the same non-fictional substance, which is to say none.
Yeah, but it also doesn't claim to be inspired scripture from the mouth of God.
Does it though? I can't remember what the deal is with that, but I thought that it was like claiming to be canonical.
Not to my knowledge.
I'll have to do some research.
Okay, you do that.
I'll get back to you.
You do that.
We kind of got really sidetracked here.
I know, like, we totally got off the subject of penises. That's so weird.
Oh, yeah. So back to these penises.
Okay, so if you had to rate this verse on a scale of one two-headed uncircumcised penis to, like, 46 syphilitic unicorns, what would you rate it?
Oh, my. Oh, dear. I'm going to give it just like an average Joe penis. Just like a regular, everyday, normal guy penis.
Okay, so this verse gets one penis.
Yes, just one regular penis.
I almost feel like that's a decent rating on this.
I give up. I'm done. Have a good day, listeners.
All right, bye-bye. We have big news this week. I get to thank not just one, but two patrons for their generous support of the show. So, big thanks go out to patrons Gaytheist and Lisa McLean. You are awesome. If you'd like to become a patron, keep listening through the end of the episode. If you don't want to give us money, you could help us by reviewing and rating us on iTunes, Google Play, and everywhere else you get your podcast. Until next week, if you have questions or comments, please send us an email to podcast@waywardwillis.com. Intro music was provided by Austin Cologne and used with permission. You can find more of Austin's music linked in the show notes. This podcast is a media production of Willisware LLC. All rights reserved.
This has been The Wayward Willis. If you liked what you just heard and you want more of Jon and Logan, you can follow us on Twitter @WaywardWillis, Facebook at facebook.com/TheWaywardWillis, or at willisweb.com. If you want to help the show and have a few extra dollars, you can donate per episode or per month on Patreon at patreon.com/wayward. We'll be back next week.